The weather is one of the few things that impacts everyone in the world on a daily basis. In fact, there are so many decisions that we make based upon what the weather is or what the weather is going to be. And when you start thinking about software, well, everyone has a weather app on their phone, they might have a weather app on their computer, and many other people have weather widgets on their desktop because we want to know what the weather is. And if you are writing software and you want to incorporate weather information, there are so many services out there that you can use. However, none of them are as good as weatherstack. Weatherstack is a RESTful API that lets you tap into accurate real-time weather as well as historical and forecast information. And it is trusted by over 75,000 companies worldwide. That's a lot of companies. And one of the reasons why it is trusted by so many different people is that it is built upon the API layer's infrastructure. Now, if you're not familiar with API layer, it is a company that writes APIs. If you go to apilayer.com, you'll see a lot of products and services. All of them are APIs. So they know what they are doing. They know how to build a RESTful API that is lightning fast, and it is pretty much always available. I mean, an uptime of 99.99999 is almost just as good as 100. So if you need accurate current real-time weather, WeatherStack has got you covered because their data providers are some of the largest and most respected weather stations around the world. They get up-to-date weather information for millions of locations. So it doesn't matter where you are or where you want to get weather information for, WeatherStack has got you covered. Now, it's much more than just accurate real-time current weather. There's also historical weather that goes back to 2008. Now, one might ask, why do we need historical information? Well, we can look at historical information to identify trends because sometimes trends are more accurate than the forecast. I mean, we all know that forecasts aren't really reliable. They're kind of close, but if you watch your local news, a lot of times they're off. But still, that is useful information, and you can also get the forecast up to 14 days in the future. So you have all of this information at your fingertips that you can incorporate within your applications. So what we're going to do in this video is create an account, and we are going to make an HTTP request to get the local weather for whatever city or region that we want. So of course, the first thing that you need to do is create an account. Now, this gives us an opportunity to look at the subscriptions. Of course, they have a free subscription, but as you might expect, you get what you pay for. So the free subscription just gives you real-time weather, which that might be all that you need. But if you need more information, the standard, professional, or business plans would probably be better for you. Now, if you have some insane application requirements, such as more than 1 million requests per month, then there's custom pricing. So just contact them with what your requirements are and they can handle it. Now, of course, every request requires an API key. So go ahead and sign up for the free account. It's very simple and straightforward. Just fill out all of the information. And after all of that is done, you will be greeted with the 3-step quick start guide. There you will find your API key. So we will use that here in a few moments. There's also some information about the API endpoints that are available. You can see that there are several here. There's an endpoint for current weather, for historical, for forecasts, and there's even a special endpoint for autocomplete. And then finally, there's also some ready-to-run examples. So this is a request for the current information for New York. So just simply clicking on that link takes us to the result of that API call. So for this video, we are going to use JavaScript because it's very easy to get up and running with our tooling. So first thing, we are going to make a directory. I'm just going to call it weatherstack, and I'm going to use npm. Now, if you don't have Node.js installed, then now is the time to do it. So you'll just want to point your browser to nodejs.org, download the LTS version, and install it. Just take the defaults. It's a very easy and straightforward installation. Then we will run npm init -y. Now, of course, we want to do this inside of the directory that we created. This is going to initialize our project with all of the default settings. And then we want to install something called light server, because in order to issue HTTP requests, we need to be using an HTTP server. We can't just open up the file from the file system in the browser and try to issue HTTP requests. It's not going to work. So we're going to install this light server because it is a lightweight HTTP server that we can just get up and running very quickly. And we're going to save this as a dev dependency because it's not something that our project is actually going to use for production purposes, but for development. Now, this is a very quick installation. It'll probably go much quicker on your machine. But once it's done, we can fire up our code editor and we can get started. Now, I'm using Visual Studio Code, which is the best editor for JavaScript. And we can create a new file and get some HTML very quickly. I'm just going to type an exclamation point, hit tab, and voila, there we have our markup. Now, we're going to, of course, be using JavaScript here. And if we wanted to, let's take a look at the documentation, because there are several code examples for different languages. If you scroll down in the documentation, there's code examples. You can see PHP, Python, Node.js, jQuery, Go, and Ruby. If we look at Node.js, we can see that they're using Axios, which is what I would typically use within just any application, really. If we look at jQuery, same thing. All of these are making requests using JavaScript, but of course they're using different APIs to do that. In our case, we are going to be using Fetch because, well, all modern browsers supports the Fetch API, and they don't have an example for that, so we can provide that example here. Now, these exact code examples aren't going to work for us because they are making requests for HTTPS. Now, that is only available for paid subscriptions. For our free subscription, we can only make requests in the clear, so there's no HTTPS for us. However, if we go back to the quick start guide, we can see that the request that they provide does not have HTTPS. So actually what we can get started with is just this URL that we opened up. So let's copy that. And we are going to use that as the URL for our request here. So whenever we call fetch, we'll pass in that URL. Now fetch is asynchronous. It's going to return a promise. So we will then follow that up by taking the JSON response. If we go back and look at the response, we can see that that is in JSON format, and it will always give us JSON format, even if there's an error, which we will look at here in a few moments. The only time you won't get JSON is if you have a request that is part of the 0.00001% of the time that the API is not available, which, well, it's always going to be up, so you don't have to really worry about that. All right, so we are making our request. We want to take the JSON response and convert that into a JavaScript object that we can then use. And then from then on, well, we can do whatever we want. In this particular case, let's just write it out to the console so that we can see what that looks like. Now, of course, this is a rather long statement, so let's put this on multiple lines. And we want to fire up our HTTP server. So we will do that. Let's do this. Let's go back to package.json and let's add a script here that we will just call serve. And then from here, we will just say light server as the property. We'll go back to the command line and say npm run serve. That's going to run our application. It's also going to automatically open it up in the browser. But of course, we're writing the information to the console. So let's pull up the developer tools, and there we can see the result. There is our object, and we can inspect the response. So we can see that in New York right now, there is no cloud cover. It feels like 11, which that's cold. And there's 23% humidity. That's more than what I would prefer. We also have some other information, such as the air pressure, the visibility. We can also look at these weather icons. Let's take this value here and let's open that up and see what we have. So if we wanted to incorporate these weather icons that are given to us by the API, we could do that. There it is. And of course, we have the wind speed, the wind direction, and we also have some location information, such as the lat long, the local time, and the time zone as well. Then we also have some information about the request that was made, such as the query, the type, the unit, and the language. All right, so let's take a look at the documentation. So let's go to the information on the current endpoint. Now you can see over on the right hand side there's this available on. That's going to tell you what endpoint is available for whatever subscription that you're using. So the current weather is available for all plans. And you can see here that we need to provide the access key. We also need to provide the query, and we can pass a single location or a multiple semicolon separated location. So let's try that. We can also change the units. Now, we saw that we were using M for our units. I'm going to use F for Fahrenheit because that's what we use here in the States. Now, inside of our code, we could edit the query string directly inside of the URL. I hate doing that. So instead, what we're going to do is use the URL search params. So let's create a variable called params. We will new up URL search params, and then we can pass in all of the query parameters as a set of key value pairs or property value pairs. So the first thing we need to provide is the access key, which of course is our access key. So let's go ahead and let's grab that, and we will simply just paste this in. Now, since that is a string, we of course want that to be a string. I'm going to put this on multiple lines so that our code is a little bit easier to see. So the next thing we need is our query, and the current query is New York. So let's do that. But we also want to get the information for something else like Dallas. So we're going to separate those with semicolons. We also want to set the units for Fahrenheit here. So these are all the query parameters that we are going to do, and we can just simply output this inside of our URL. Now, of course, the quote-unquote correct way of doing it would be params and then toString, but it's going to automatically call toString for us. So let's just keep it like that. So there we go. We can go back to the browser and let's see what we have. Now, we don't have a successful response because obviously it says success is a false, but this just shows you that even for errors, you will have a JSON structure that you can parse out and use within your applications. And we find out why. Bulk queries not supported on plan. So we cannot make a bulk query using the free plan. So let's just get rid of Dallas. We will once again make a query for New York, and we will have almost the same information that we had before, except that now all of our units are in Fahrenheit. So now we can see that feels like is 52. Well, that's not cold. Never mind. When I saw 11 for Celsius, I thought that that was cold. It's not. 52 is actually quite nice. And of course, we have all of the other information that we had before. If we look at the request object, then we can see our updated information. Everything is the same except for the units. Now we can see that we are using Fahrenheit as opposed to metric. And so there we go. That's how you can make requests to the WeatherStack API. Weather is a very important part of everyone's everyday life. And by integrating the WeatherStack API, you can give your users real-time and historical weather data for millions of locations around the world. Over 75,000 companies trust WeatherStack to serve accurate weather data for their applications. It's a rock-solid platform that can handle your most demanding needs.